So today, we're going to dive into a really personal family story, one that ends with a man having to make an impossible choice. But what's really interesting is that tucked away inside all this family drama is a lesson for all of us about responsibility, conflict, and what love really means. I want you to really think about this for a second. Put yourself in this situation. Your mother is on one side, your wife is on the other, and someone tells you you can only pick one. It's an absolutely gut-wrenching choice, right? Well, that's the exact spot our main guy, Amit, ends up at. All right, so to really get how things got this bad, we've got to go back. We need to understand Amit's world before his marriage. For him, life was pretty simple. And his mother, well, she was the absolute center of his universe. And his upbringing is really the key to this whole story. See, Amit was the only son, and he was raised to be completely obedient. In his mind, his mother was perfect. She could do no wrong. She even called him her hira, her diamond. He was so treasured that he literally never had to lift a finger at home. Basically, his mom was his whole world and he was hers. And for a while, everything seemed to be going perfectly, just like it was scripted. Amit landed a great job, and his parents did their part and found him a wonderful wife. Her name was Preeti, and she was smart, beautiful, the whole package. On the surface, it looked like the perfect beginning. But you know how these things go. Underneath that perfect, shiny surface, there was this giant crack just waiting to happen. The problem wasn't really the people themselves, it was the totally different philosophies they were raised with. And this was the hidden fault line that was about to tear their new life apart. And when you put their two upbringings side by side, wow, it's like night and day. In Amit's house, the rules were super clear. A man's job is outside the home, a woman's is inside. The son gets taken care of. But Preeti? She grew up in a home where men and women were equal partners in everything. Sons helped out in the kitchen right alongside their sisters. These were two completely different worlds, about to collide under one roof. So what happens when these two different worlds are forced together? Well, it doesn't stay a philosophical debate for long. It becomes what we're calling the unspoken war. This is where all those little disagreements started to fester and turn into some serious, silent resentment. And you know who was right in the middle of this, doing absolutely nothing? Amit. He saw the tension building. He saw his wife, Preeti, crying after little spats with his mom, but he never stepped in. He never once just asked her, hey, what's wrong? He just kind of hoped it would all blow over on its own. Big mistake. Because, of course, it didn't just blow over. It got worse. A lot worse. At first, it was just small digs from his mother about Preeti's modern ways. Then, when Preeti had a tough pregnancy, her mother-in-law just brushed off the doctor's orders for bed rest. Things really took a turn when an uncle came to visit and Preeti was too sick to cook, which was seen as a huge insult. And the final straw? You're not going to believe this. A massive fight over spilled milk. And that fight over the milk, that was it. That was the final shot. The silent war was officially over. Now everything was out in the open, and Amit was finally forced to deal with the mess he'd been ignoring for so long. His mother sits him down and she just lays it all out on the table. No more hiding. She says, we cannot live under the same roof. You have to choose today, me or your wife. The moment he had been dreading his whole life was finally here. But what happens next? Well, nobody saw this coming. Amit doesn't pick his mom. He doesn't pick his wife. He totally flips the script and points the finger at someone else entirely. So he turns to his mother first. He says, I love you. You are my life. But how can you ask me to just leave my wife? Don't I have a responsibility to her? He's showing his love, but he's also questioning her ultimatum. And then he turns to his wife, Preeti, who's probably expecting him to defend her. But instead he asks her, how can you call me a good husband if I couldn't even be a good son to my own parents? How could I ever be a good husband to you? And then he looks at both of them, the two most important women in his life, and he says the words that change everything. The guilty one is me. And that was it. That was the big light bulb moment. Amit finally got it. This was never really his mom versus his wife. It was a fight that grew in the space where he should have been. You see, he was supposed to be the bridge that connected their two very different worlds. But instead of being a bridge, he'd just been a wall, letting them crash into each other over and over again. Now look, saying I'm guilty doesn't just magically fix years of hurt, right? Of course not. But what it did was it cracked open a door. It was the first shaky step towards a new beginning. And in that quiet moment after he said that, something incredible happened. His mother, who for years had only called Preeti things like her or your wife, actually looked at her and said her name. She just said, Preeti, will you make tea for your father-in-law? It sounds like such a small thing, right? But after years of tension, it was everything. The healing had started. So what can we all learn from Amit's story? Well, it kind of boils down to three big things. First, you have to take responsibility. Stop just watching from the sidelines. Second, you've got to be the one to open up communication. Be that bridge, not the wall. And finally, you have to lead with empathy. Really try to understand where everyone is coming from. And here's why this story is so important. This isn't just about Amit and his family. This is something that's happening in so many families right now. It's the problem of a generation that's caught between the traditions they grew up with and the new ideas of partnership they want for their future. So that brings us to the final question, and this one is for you. I want you to think about your own family, your own life. In the middle of all the little dramas and disagreements, what role are you playing? Are you the observer, just hoping it'll all work itself out? Are you maybe, without meaning to, a divider? Or are you actively trying to be the bridge,